What's up, guys? It's Sad Zilla with another episode of Zilla Mode, and today we're going to be talking about AI music and how I think the conversation around it is evolving, or that I think it should evolve a little bit more, and what direction we should be taking this conversation. Also, before we get started, just letting you guys know that I do have a Discord. If you guys want to join the Discord and join our community. We hang out there, talk about music, music marketing, and things like that. We also watch movies on there and hang out, play Overwatch and things like that. So definitely join us over there. And also, if you guys can, hit down below the bell icon to get notifications whenever I drop a new episode just like this. Or if you're not subscribed to me, maybe consider that after you see what I'm going to be talking about today. So basically what I want to talk about is I've been thinking about AI music and this conversation around it a lot lately, and I think that people are thinking about it way too simply. It always gets boiled down to this: AI is stealing from artists, and that is true in a lot of ways, but that's really just where that conversation stops. And I think that, and I'm not even saying that there's not truth to that, obviously, because obviously there are parts that are very sketchy, especially when it comes to getting into the voices, the likenesses of people, all that kind of stuff. And there's barely any regulation around any of this, right? It's really the wild, wild west out there. But I think a bigger issue is that people talk about AI like it created some new problem that wasn't there before. But I think it really just exposed a problem that was always there, or at least has been there in the last, 10, 15 years. And that's really what I want to talk about today. Because if we're being honest with ourselves, the internet has always been rewarding imitation for a very long time. And that shows up in music a lot. It shows up in content. Somebody sees something that's working or hears a certain sound that's working, and instead of asking, well, how can I make something that's truly different? The question becomes, how do I do my own version of that? Because they want the success at the end of the day, right? That's the main priority. You can go on YouTube right now and look up beats on YouTube. You can find almost a beat for any kind of artist that you're looking for, because everybody is making these type beats for people looking to sound like that artist and build something that is as close to that artist, even their branding, their sound, it doesn't matter. They're trying to become a version of that because they know that it works. And that's their whole selling point. A lot of people make a lot of money off of doing type beats. A lot of people make a lot of money off of, copying other people on things like TikTok and things like that, even if we talk about beyond music. And it's not even just beats either. It's tutorials, right, on how to sound like this artist, presets, breakdowns, all that. People want to know how to write like certain artists, how to mix like them, how to make melodies like those artists, how they structure their songs. There's so much. You can learn so much from YouTube and things like that, where people are just giving you the sauce of how to become like this artist as much as possible. So I think it's weird that people started coming out and acting like AI came in and suddenly started copying these styles out of nowhere. The groundwork for this was already there in the first place. It's just that you had to work harder to get the results that you're wanting. It was like, oh, you want to sound like Drake? Well, it's going to take a lot of, practice and stuff like that to imitate that guy and imitate his sound. But at the end of the day, you're stealing from that artist in a lot of different ways. And so it just comes down to the conversation really just devolves more into well, what's the process of making the music, right? And that's another subject. Maybe we'll get into that in a little bit, but that's why I feel like the conversation is incomplete, because it's not nuanced enough. Because yeah, AI can mimic and it can knock off a vibe. It can get that sound, but it's really just learning inside of the culture that was already obsessed with recreating what works already. And to me, that's the real thing that it really exposed. It exposed how comfortable music had already gotten with this sameness, regurgitating the same sounds and music over and over and over again, because we want to find success in whatever we, saw success with in the first place. We always want that cheat code, right? So even before AI, it was already easier to make music. You get a DAW, turn on auto tune, and a lot of conversations that we're talking about now used to be the conversations around like auto tune or using certain presets, using cheat codes to get the final product that a lot of bigger artists back then, used to take a lot of money to get. I mean, just having a recording setup in your room at this point, instead of having to go to a recording studio, a professional recording studio, and pay $1,000 for a session, is a huge change in itself. So AI just took this comfortable, accessibility and then just sped it up like a lot. And that is a problem in itself, right? But it's not necessarily a problem that AI created, I guess. But I think a big reason why I don't panic about it the same way that a lot of other people do is because someone can go on these platforms and they can say, hey, make me a Sad Zilla song, right? And it gives them some weak knockoff version, some Timu Sad Zilla, right? But that doesn't scare me because, I mean, at the end of the day, if we're being real, they could already try to do that themselves without AI. They could find a beat on there if it's a Sad Zilla type beat. They could come close. They could study the flow. They could mimic the energy that I put on a record. They could copy my structure, my writing style, whatever. But at the end of the day, like, they're never going to put out what I put out, right? It's all going to come down to what am I doing? What's my brand, right? What is my sound? What am I doing? So I think at the end of the day, it doesn't really matter to me. It's going to come down to what I do, right? And so I feel like it's wasted energy to complain about something that's out of my control and like how people can use it or don't use it or whatever. I think the difference now is just that process has gotten faster. So it's kind of jarring, and that's why people fear it so much. And I think that's why this whole like stealing music conversation just feels incomplete. What's up, guys? Sad Zilla in the editing booth. I just wanted to also talk about how when AI is taking from artists, we're not just talking about the artists that are the big artists, right? I think that there's some part of that that's coming into play now. They're starting to sell off their stuff. Like, these record labels are selling the likeness of the sound of these artists that are signed to their labels. So it's becoming there's a whole new dynamic that's coming into play right here. But the thing is that these AI companies like Suno, Udio, whatever, they don't have to get the stuff from those artists anymore legally. Like, they can just go ahead and get it off of YouTube on these YouTube beats. They can get information from that. They can get information from TikTok whenever you post your music on TikTok right now. Like, let's say a demo or something like that. All that is trained, AI is trained on all that information. And so if you're sounding like an artist, or, these YouTube beat makers make, Travis Scott type beats or Bruno Mars type beats, Weekend beats or whatever, it can train off of that. And so even if it's like a knockout version of the real thing, it does good enough to where these programs can mimic what the real artists are doing, the big artists are doing. So just wanted to bring that up to you guys, because that is like something to think about when we talk about like stealing from artists. And this is still theft in a lot of ways, but it's just a lot more nuanced than just like, oh, they're just taking Drake and putting it in the thing, It's a lot more nuanced than that. It's more likely that it's taking a Timu version of that artist and throwing its information into the program and stuff like that. And I think that is the uncomfortable part that a lot of artists are having trouble with coming to terms with, because once you really sit with that, now the conversation gets a little bit messier. Now you have to like think, instead of thinking just AI is bad, now you have to admit that a lot of what AI is doing is just fits perfectly in the kind of culture that we've already kind of created, that's built around the views, the streams, the numbers, and getting the attention that we do, that just makes around making something that is not even new, around something that is just regurgitating the same thing over and over again. And I don't think that this discomfort is just about the theft part, which I think needs to be regulated, and I think we need to do something about that. But I think a lot of it has to do with people realizing how replaceable just doing close enough actually is. Because if your whole thing is just, I can sound like the style that already exists, then yeah, AI should make you nervous. But if what you do actually feels human, specific to you on a personal level, like if it feels real and lived in, I don't think that this really becomes some instant death sentence for music or your music. If anything, I think it puts more pressure on artists to have something more real about them so that they're not just regurgitating the same thing over and over again, because I think that's going to get really old really quick. I mean, one thing that's really dying right now are cover songs. I mean, like AI is just making cover songs useless. Same thing with like, oh, it's this song in this style of music. Like AI can do that like way better than what we can do it, because we're not doing anything really unique. We're just copying two things and putting them together. So I think this whole conversation is just deeper than we've really been talking about it. And I'm obviously not saying that there's not real issues here, because there are. Like the legal side of this is messy. The ethics of it are messy. The compensation side is messy. There's just a lot that needs to be figured out, and it's not being figured out right now. I think recently they did, the whole thing about, you can't copyright AI generated stuff. So that's a step in the right direction. But I think that's even like a baby step. Right now it feels like a lot of this stuff is just happening before anybody really has decided like where the line is going to be. But I mean, like, even with that being true, I think it still helps nobody to just sit around and complain about AI all day. Like, that's the whole conversation. At the end of the day, you got to get out there and you got to make music. You got to make what is special to you, because you have to make something that connects. You still have to make something that feels like there's a real person behind it. And right now, I don't think that we're in the same place where everybody is abandoning real artists to go listen to some random AI slop all day. Like, I think that maybe things will change over time. Maybe this gets a little bit more advanced, right? Because, I mean, maybe it just gets weirder. Maybe we'll talk about that in another video. But yeah, obviously there are parts of AI music that are clearly a problem and going to continue to be a problem. But I think it just exposed this bigger issue that we are kind of ignoring. And once we see that the machine was able to do everything that we've already been doing and taken advantage of, everybody wants to act shocked. And I just think that it's not shocking. And I think that we need to make changes to how we approach creation of music and how we approach even making content. But that's a whole other subject. I think it says a lot about the music culture before AI even showed up. So anyway, I'm going to leave that with you guys. Let me know down in the comments what you guys think. I just wanted to kind of touch up on this. Let me know down in the comments if you guys have any questions about this, or you guys have any more questions about anything, then maybe I'll make a video about it. But until then, Zilla out.